Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Pies Presser. Another jam-packed episode where we are going to spend a couple of the initial segments on the game from Sunday, but then shortly after we move on, it's Tuesday. We're 5 days away from the massive clash against Port Adelaide. So we best be looking forward to that, as I'm sure the club probably already turned the leaf over after today, I would say, maybe even yesterday, depending on when they did their review. But certainly, I wonder how the rest of you feel. What I didn't take into account was with there only being 2 games in 1 week, which, I mean, when's the only other time you get that in finals? So I felt like the microscope was on the game that we played, as well as Sydney and Hawthorn, and you just had to deal with any repercussions, whether the media was positive or negative. It was just one of those situations where I wasn't ready for. I'm not saying I didn't appreciate the backlash or the outrage from the media. And more so, I was like, oh, wow, this is a lot of commentary around the game. I found that like 360 on the couch, Channel 7, Channel 9, all these experts and pundits were sort of all just double dipping, triple dipping, duplicating sound bites of what they were all talking about when it came to the game. How many times can you say Nick Daicos is unfit? How many times can you say Pendles looked slow? Like, it just feels like it was the same gift wrapped in a different piece of paper each time, except it was the same thing on the inside. It was Lynx Africa, you just knew you were getting Lynx Africa for Christmas if it was wrapped up and it looked a certain way. That was the Nick Daicos commentary. That was the Scott Pendlebury commentary. But speaking about the great man, my favorite captain, Scott Pendlebury, his final Howie Games episode came out today, and it was very insightful. I loved it. I loved every single episode leading into it, and I love how he was willing to front his podcast that he agreed to with Howie throughout the build-up of this game against GWS, and then the direct outcome as well. So what I found interesting, and I was thinking about it earlier today before even listening to the podcast, because in previous episodes of this podcast, Penn was like, yeah, something I like to do is I like to research how the stoppage game works for the opposition that we're coming up against. I go, okay, well, I just wonder if he looked at the centre bounce work from the GWS Carlton pre-season game, because in my mind, I was thinking, well, if you go back to last year, you're looking at Tom Green in there, you're looking at Peatling in there, you're looking at Callahan in there, Kelly, Canelio. But what was different was this game was we got probably the biggest serving of Finn Callahan that any club has gotten yet, as far as like midfield time was concerned, because there was no Tom Green. But of course, Pendlebury, the ultimate professional, indeed analysed the game between GWS and Carlton. That was the game I watched, and that was the game, and I was only a preseason game, and I was like, wow, Callahan looks good. I mean, he made my Supercoach draft team, if that counts for anything. So that was before this game that we just had against GWS. So if he's done the research, if he's studied and taken the time to look at the centre bounce work and the stoppage work, I was just wondering what made the Pies and or Pendlebury think that Pendlebury could run along with Callahan in the majority of these centre bounces that we saw. There was hardly any adjustments made, I would say. And this is something we spoke about pre-game, about Fly, is how reactive, and is he going to be stubborn in the game to make changes in regards to what we're seeing live. You could have, I think all of you listening to me right now could have seen the game Finn Callaghan was about to have, even after the first quarter. He was running amok in there. We talked about, Bo McCreary and Jack Crisp maybe giving us some balance in speed. We didn't see them in the centre bounce until the last quarter. But in all fairness, even when Bo was in on Finn Callaghan, I was watching back the game today in the fourth quarter in particular, because I wanted to see how Crispy and Callaghan looked in the midfield. Bo had a tremendous centre bounce clearance that led to that really nice goal from Jamie Elliott. And bear in mind, the game was chalked, iced. So in this one sequence that I'm thinking about now, it could be just, well, we'd given up and GWS wanted more and more. In particular, Finn Callaghan wanted more and more. I saw Finn Callaghan run off Bo, and the distance was just gaping and gaping and gaping and gaping. I'm like, wow, that's Bo McCreary. Okay, is he more explosive? Yes. Has he probably given up on the game? Yes. I was like, man, if that's my solution and that's what he's doing, it's like, who do you put on him? Maybe it's Jack Crisp. Who knows? Who knows? So, look, we were beaten by a really good team. We were beaten by Finn Callaghan, who, mind you, had the maximum top speed in the game as a midfielder. I think it was like 33.9 kilometers an hour. So he did, look, GWS put some massive numbers together, but so did Callaghan. And a lot of the work he did was off the back of his gut running. He is a dog. I don't know how else to say it. He's just a beast. So another thing that Pendles mentioned, well, in analyzing the game on Sunday, was we looked a bit slow and boring with the footy at times, quote unquote. So I'm glad they saw it. They saw how slow and lack of method we had going forward. I think it's just an overcorrection from last year, going from not having any tools forward of the ball to having 3 decent options, and we just tried to abuse that. Maybe we weren't willing to run enough. I'm almost certain now, with what Pendles has said and everybody else in between, and looking at the game myself, I'm almost certain we're going to have to see a more assertive Collingwood on Saturday. We're going to see us throw caution to the wind, particularly from the back half. We just have to. I don't think their forward half unit, Port Adelaide, have the same cohesiveness that GWS had on the weekend. So I think there's room there to build up through their back half. Well, they'll have Joe Richards there. They'll have Rioli. I think they don't have superb small forwards, medium-sized forwards. They'll have Sam Powell-Pepper there, who's respectable in his own way. So that will be something to keep a very close eye on. And then Pendles on himself for the game. He thought he was okay, is essentially what he said. He thought he was okay, but he doesn't accept okay. He wants to be more than an okay player, age 37. I also thought he was okay. I think the mainstream media is probably just blowing that out of proportion. I think it was the wrong matchup for Pendlebury. I don't know if he was the one who said before the game, yeah, I want Finn. I don't know. It just boggles my mind. But anyways, I thought he was okay. He was a bit fumbly on 2 or 3 instances, but I thought he had a really good game against Richmond. He had he probably had a 5 out of 10 game on a weekend. I think he bounces back. I think he does. All right, now let's catch up onto the comments. Let's have a look. How the boys recover for another stink knock. That's going to be a huge, another question mark. So it's 37 on Saturday in Melbourne, and then when the game is on at 7:30, it will be 28 degrees. So just when you think you've gotten away from the hot conditions in Sydney, you come back to Melbourne and you're going to have to, the chips are going to be on the table when it comes to your fitness. And we're going to talk about that in the next piece of the show regarding Pies conditioning. Huge game against Port Adelaide at the G on Saturday night. Absolutely. Freddie Jong's in the chat. Judge, I don't think everyone's freaking out. I mean, we're not here. We're probably just trying to figure out what's going on. A week's a long time in footy. There were things we'd like to see changed. I think that the overarching feel as well, or thought that's sort of lingering in my mind is like, at the start of last year, we lost against GWS, maybe not this badly, but we're like, after that first game, we're like, oh, let's just don't stress. It's one game. One game turned into two, turned into three, and then we'll chasing tail for the remainder of the season, really. So just with that in the back of my mind, I'm like, how quickly are we going to make some changes? That's what I'm curious about, the Judge. Cameron's ruck work was pathetic. Well, I thought he could have taken the ball out of the ruck a lot more. I think Lockie Keefe, he surprised me, but he did well. But he did give us first use a lot. It's just that maybe our midfielders didn't do enough with the first use that DC offered. Do we find it a good thing that Pendles is our ball movement coach while still being an active player? He definitely made the call to play on Finn, in my opinion. Yeah, I don't know. I think Pendles is a genius. I think being a ball movement coach whilst playing is fine. It's a minority role. It's not like something that's gonna blur the lines of player versus coach. You reckon he definitely made the call on Finn? Well, that would be interesting. That would be naive. All right, so I say let's move to the next part of the show, which is the Pies conditioning. So, all right, Pies conditioning. John Ralph, and the rest of the pundits believe John Ralph in particular believes Nick Daicos is weeks away from full fitness, judging by his cramps. Yet, I don't think. Did they watch the other game? Or did they watch GWS themselves? There were players from every team cramping up, seizing up. Yes, Nick Daicos was the worst of them all, but they all had their issues, and you'll see that Geelong, that game in Geelong on Saturday, when it's like peak heat, the peak of the temperature for the day. You'll see people struggling to get through the game. I think people failed to account for the humidity from the game. Bucks interestingly said on the couch last night. He said he knows a guy in conditioning, so he spoke to someone in the conditioning world and suggests Collingwood were a far way off from their conditioning. So I don't know how to feel about. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but what I will say is, when going to the training throughout the preseason, we noticed that here's one thing: there were no intra-club matches. Yes, there was match simulation, but they were sporadically put in. They weren't big blocks. There wasn't like, say, 3-4 solid quarters, 120 minutes, or not even like 80 minutes. Like not even 3 quarters of proper match conditioning. I think without that, it's hard to get that match hardening and preparation for the start of the year. You have to bear in mind, our first portion of our practice matches were against Gold Coast and the Suns, a broken up team, ridiculous, 50 minutes each, no time on, plus rotation. So how many minutes are these players playing in that first practice match? Hardly any, I would suggest. And then we blew out a Richmond game. Now, we blew out a Richmond team where the game was probably done by halftime. So you cool the jets by then, you take your foot off the pedal. Naturally, that's what happens. So with all that intertwined, maybe with a little bit of not implementing an intra-club at some point and unfortunate circumstances with Gold Coast and Brisbane AFL organising that type of triple threat, absolute garbage, never want to see it again, tied in with playing a team that's probably going to hardly win a game this year, be lucky to win 2-3 games in Richmond, and only playing up to the half where the game was iced. Nick Daicos also played 59% time on ground as well. So maybe, I have to say, maybe we weren't prepared well enough, and there were a few variables, some in our control, some out of our control. But the reality is, we go into a game against the best pressure side in the comp in humid conditions, hot weather. It's bound to happen. So it is what it is. I'm sure we'll look back at it at the end of the year and go, all right, well, let's make sure we never do this triple threat nonsense again. Let's make sure we, just get it right. I think maybe there was some tricks we missed here, perhaps. The game against Port, like I said on Saturday, will be 37 degrees. It cools down to a measly 28 degrees. We'll see how much weight this narrative has on Saturday against, the likes of Horn Francis and Rosie. Like, these players are really going to test you in the middle. So we'll see. We shall see. What are the comments saying? Let's see. Report Collingwood considering opting out of opening round AFL tonight. Yeah, I think Fly did hint at that in the post game interview. He said, "Look, it's a good cause. It's good for the northern game or for the fans to get more interest in the northern states." But he did say, I forget what his exact quote, but he mentioned, like, maybe we'll talk about not being a part of every opening round. Get other teams involved as well so they can have a bit of respite. Hoskin Elliott has been ruled out of the game. Yeah, he had a back issue, didn't he? Okay. We're going to, towards the back end of this show, we're going to look at the predicted team. We're going to try a predicted team. Dennis, how you going? So we have no confidence in our group to win a game in Sydney in round one. This club's cooked. What do you mean? Sell Triple M, Madison? I think our conditioning will come better as the year continues. Hardly see it being a lingering problem. Time will tell. Opening round is an extension of practice matches, says Dom. Round one mentally is round one. Opening round or round 0 mentally has no significance. Unfortunately, it does when it comes to the premiership table. I was at the GWS game. The Pies looked like they couldn't or didn't want to chase. Yeah, that's the question. Was it couldn't, wouldn't? Who knows? So looking at that Port game on Saturday, John Ralph is tipping, and I'm sure most of us will probably expect Port Adelaide to be licking their lips and will probably look to use Willem Drew on Nick Daicos. Now, I'm sure most of you saw the soundbite from Kane Corns having a crack at Nick's off-season, I think he missed like the first 2-3 weeks when the 1st to 4th years were supposed to be there. But we all know Nick Daicos is the hardest working player every session. We know he ticks the boxes. He would have done his own stuff while he was in America. Surely you give him a little bit of respite there. I don't think Cornsey trying to draw the dots between Nick Daicos being unfit or these cramps and compare and drawing the dots between that and him on Saturday. I just don't think that's rational. I think that's just trying to get the best soundbite for the week. He's accepted all these big contracts, big shows, so I think he's just trying to earn his pennies, right? And at the end of the day, I still think people blowing this Toby Bedford tag out of proportion. They just need to cool their jets a little bit. He still had 17 touches in the first half. That second quarter, he really got us going when we kicked those 3 goals in a row between Myercheck and Elliott. And then Nick literally, even just before halftime, Nick could not run. So for more than a half of a game, his numbers were way down. It was almost like they had an extra midfielder playing because we had Nick Daicos on the field. So we've seen Nick in the past. He's overcome tags. Just off the top of my head, he's overcome tags against Sydney, North Melbourne last year, Melbourne Demons last year with Neil Bullen. His ability to go forward, I think, with ways to break the tag, I think first and foremost, if he's not having any success in the midfield, put him in a forward line. He's done some special things there. He knows where the goals are. And then if that doesn't work, then you can try him off the half back. But I'm not too sure if they'd be super willing to play him off the half back right now. So Willem Drew to tag Daicos. Nick Daicos is what we're hearing. But hopefully, as long as Nick recovers from these cramps, I think there's what we haven't spoken about, which would definitely still be on the table, is how well did he prepare with his nutrition? Did he get the carbs he needed? Was he hydrated? All these things. Was he overexcited for the game? These are things he definitely would know by now, being 2-3 days removed from game day. I think, Pendles said in his episode with the Howie game, say everyone was excited, the mood was up and all that sort of stuff. So who knows how much the over excitement tied in with the anxiety leads into these cramps and all these sort of things, wearing you down a little bit quicker. Nick Daicos, slow, I reckon. I don't understand why does 4 games in northern states preclude the other 5 games being played in the other states on the same weekend? What does it even accomplish by giving them exclusivity? Just probably more eyeballs. If you have all the games on in the one round, in an opening round, people are probably going to pick and choose what games they watch. When you only have 4 games, or in this case, only 2 games, they're going to get more likely they're going to watch those northern state games. I think Brownie brought up a really nice point. Something like having, I think it was Brownie, he said, have 2 weeks in the mid-year where it gets cold in Melbourne. People want to get away. So they go to the Gold Coast, they go to New South Wales, and they have a Victorian team play against Gold Coast and Brisbane, or 2 Victorian teams play against Gold Coast and Brisbane, and then reverse those fixtures the following week. And same goes with what happens in Sydney. Will Day, same thing, mate. He got cramps in the third quarter in the other game. No one talks about that because they won. Nobody talks about Lockie Whitfield having to finish in the goal square because he couldn't move because GWS won. Yeah, I reckon so too, Tark. Yeah. Look, Brisbane struggled monumentally at the start of last year. I'd rather not be in that position again. Yeah, exactly, Dom. I don't think getting cramps necessarily has anything to do with putting in the work during the preseason. When all the trainings I go to where Nick Daicos is participating in, he is the one with the largest running tank, and he uses it and abuses it in training as well. It's not something it's not a trump card in the game. This is something that is omnipresent, whether it's training or game day. Nick is always literally running like crazy from contest to contest. So look, you can say with plantar fasciitis, he's probably had a little bit of interrupted preseason. So I don't think he's weeks away. Like we'll know more, but I don't think he's weeks away from full fitness like John Ralph is suggesting. I think could be nutrition, could be anxiety, performance, the heat, humidity, could be a number of things. We'll never know. But if he's unfit, we'll know on Saturday for certain, won't we? Also, I think I've mentioned this in a previous stream, but Nick Daicos has a statistically similar game to Isaac Heaney whilst being tagged and cramping. It's definitely getting blown out of proportion. I don't think... What do you mean, Tark, when you say Nick Daicos has a statistically similar game to Isaac Heaney? Which stats? Would the warm... Peter G asks, would the warm conditions determine selection for the Port match? Particularly Sidey or Pendles with a 6-day turnaround, even though it's played at night. I would like to think that the weather conditions will affect selection, especially like you said, it's in the evening. If Pendles and Side, look, let me put it this way, Peter. If Pendles and or Side bottom need a break off the back of a 6-day gap between games, between opening round and round one, then they shouldn't be playing AFL. They shouldn't need a break. Unless they've pulled up with an injury, that's a different story. But if they're pulling up and not getting to the starting line on Saturday night in Pendles and Sidey, who are still very important to our makeup of our side at the moment, then they shouldn't be playing. Period, full stop. Sash, they just look like they had lead legs. Okay, 1, 2, or even 3 guys, but the whole side looked heavy in the legs. Yeah. Well, GWS, Finn looked unreal. O'Halloran had some ridiculous numbers as well when it came to the running side of things. I'll just pull it up again. But you look at players who ran the most distance at high speed. Yeah, number 1, Darcy Jones. Number 2, Xavier O'Halloran. And then number 3 was Quaynor. Number 4 was Sidebottom. Number 5 was Whitfield. So 3 of your top 5 were from GWS. Total distance covered. Total distance covered. We had O'Halloran, 16.3 kilometers. Lipinski at 15.1. Callum Ward at 15. Cadman at 14.6. And then Jack Crisp at 14.6. So both our wingers with the best numbers there. Finn Callahan had the highest maximum speed at 33.1. Number 2 was Bobby Hill. Number 3 was Bo. So Bo playing in the midfield can almost match. That's crazy to think that not even Bo hit a higher top speed than what Finn Callahan did on the weekend. 32.8 versus 33.1. I don't know how marginal that is because I don't understand I'm just looking at numbers, right? But then, so Finn number 1, Bobby Hill number 2, Bo McCreary number 3, Brent Daniels number 4, Callum Brown number 5. And then if we're looking at average speed, Ned Long, because he only played a small portion of the game, so that's sort of not consistent. But beyond Ned Long, it was Xavier Halloran, Lockie Whitfield, Jacob Ware, and then you got Kieran Briggs as well, who's also inconsistent. So 3 of those players that you can really only account for because the other 2 were either subbed on or subbed off quite quickly in and out of the game. You had 3 GWS players with the highest average speeds. Darcy Jones had 31 sprints. Then you had Quaynor, Bo, Crisp, and then Toby Green. Quaynor had the most repeat efforts, then Darcy Jones, then Bo, then Brent Daniels, then Callum Brown. And then you actually had GWS run 8 more kilometers than us throughout the game. Now, is that because they defended for a large portion of that third quarter? Maybe, where there was repeat entry after repeat entry. So who knows? Voided generation. Anybody who accuses Nick Daicos of laziness or being unprepared is an unserious person. Perfect example, Kane Corns. Opting out shows we have no confidence in this side to win a game and sit. Nah, I don't think it's that. I think it's just fairness, right? It's just we've played in the first 2 opening rounds. Carlton got the pass this year. Richmond got the pass. Teams like Carlton and Richmond got passes this year. You start a week earlier, which means it is a week less of preparation. You've got to go and play against an interstate side for your first game of the year. It's just not ideal. I don't think it has anything to do with a lack of confidence or weak mentality. I think it's just fairness in the fixture. That's something that can be controlled and made as fair as possible. We've already got the hardest degree of difficulty when it comes to fixtures amongst the rest of the AFL right now for 2025. So yeah, I don't love the idea of playing every opening round. I think it's fair to share it around. I think they should get rid of round 0 and gather round. Yeah, look, we'll save that for another day. Not to mention this season is starting about 3 weeks early now. So that's another thing. The seasons are starting earlier. Therefore, especially in the northern states, it's going to be much hotter. So it's something people probably should know or be aware of when we're looking at like the conditioning and whatnot. Collingwood players going interstate on a beautiful hot night playing round zero. Sounds more like a holiday. Our game is played in the winter. Let's see then. Can we please have a serious discussion about Schultz? There's no way he can retain a spot. He was frustrating at times, wasn't he, Wilbur? And he's been frustrating throughout his tenure at the Pies so far. He just below, just in the same sort of conversation between Bo and Lockie and needing something a little bit more from one or the other. I think they both try really hard. It's just, look, maybe Bo needs to go into midfield. Lockie needs to be a little bit more, a little less fumbly and cleaner with his disposal going inside 50 or when it comes to shooting his shots on target. He had 2 shots on goal in that second quarter and missed them both. The second one was easier than the first from memory. Those moments can change the momentum and the flow of the game. I did say that with the way the game, how it panned out, I don't know if those goals would have meant anything, but how are we supposed to know? We will never know because we didn't hit, because Shooter didn't kick those goals. Not worried about Nick Daicos, says your local espresso. Somewhat worried about Pendles. Very worried about Shooter. Okay, I'll give you mine. I'd go not worried about Nick Daicos. I'd also go somewhat worried about, actually, I think you've got it right. Not worried about Nick, somewhat worried about Pendles. I wouldn't say I'm very worried about Shooter yet. I'm not going to overreact. Not going to overreact on that one yet. I can't put him in that category yet. Do we know how to go forward when we are locked up without Cox? We're not locked up without Cox, Spaniard. I know he's injured, but we're choosing to have Membry, McStay, Myercheck. I think at some point we're going to see McStay and Myercheck be the two-headed snake in the forward line. McStay played. It surprised me the numbers we had with McStay. He had 30% of his time on ground was spent as a ruckman. Like, it's just too much for our best forward. It's too much. So I think at a certain point when Cox is available, I think there's a chance we're going to see Cox, McStay, Myercheck, and then like Membry's had a great preseason. He didn't have the best game. He had little to no moments against GWS or opportunities to impress. And when he did, he dropped a chest mark. He got tackled in the goal square. So that's something Fly will have to flirt with, that idea of, all right, well, if your best forward is spending 30% of their time in a ruck, I think it's just too much, is it not? Is that not too much? GWS ground isn't the best either. Very tough field and really small compared to MCG. And there's strength in that conversation as well, Dennis. Is it Denny or Dennis? There is a great point in that conversation. Clearly, home advantage matters. And when you play at a game as foreign as NG Stadium in Sydney, you're not used to the dynamics of it. Whereas you could tell, guys, you look at the game and you look at you zoom out when you're watching the game when there's a mark in our defense and we have the ball and you look at the field, when they zoom out with the cameras and you can see, okay, GWS know how to play this field. Like there was literally not a single gap in their defensive cohesiveness from their back end to their front half, their forwards, their midfields, their defenders. They were in synchronicity. Like they were perfect in the way they defended. So while we're getting smashed about our performance, I think people are going to find out very soon how good GWS are, especially when they play at home. Yeah, we came to life a bit more when Bo went into the middle. We had a nice centre bounce clearance. I think we need to see a little bit more. He played 15% in the midfield, and that was all in the last quarter. I'd probably like to see Bo try it a little bit more in the midfield, especially in this game against Port. I don't think Cox will play this week, Chris. Does Membry come out for Cox for chop outs in the ruck? Better hit outs to advantage might be important against Port mids who will burst out the contest. Better option down the line. Yeah, I think I've said this for even in the off season. What we get with Cox is ruck, craft, and hit outs to advantage when he's in the center. Darcy Cameron offers more ability and versatility around the ground. I think Mason Cox gives us first use with good looks in the midfield as opposed to just winning a hit out for the sake of winning it. I think Cox offers that. That's why, and to allow McStay to stay in our forward 50, I think if there's a player who gets dropped to try that and test that, it's probably going to be Membry at some point, even though he had a really good preseason. That's what could happen without jumping the gun. May have already answered this late to the stream, but who do you think will replace Will Hosking? Rangatank. We're saving that for a little bit later, which we're nearly there. I'll move on. I'll move on so we can get there. So the other thing we were talking about I wanted to mention was Max Gawn on radio said today that Craig has form in those altercations with players from other teams. So apparently applied the same thing to Alex Neil-Bullen last year when he was tagging Nick Daicos relentlessly. And I just wanted to get your thoughts, guys. Like, is this something, do you like to see that from Fly? Flying the flag for his best player who's still young and is learning how to overcome this tag? Or do you prefer the players to deal with it themselves? For me, right now, without spending too much time thinking about it, I like seeing a bit of grit from Fly because he comes from Brisbane. He was a part of that dynasty side. And they were the unsociable Lions before the unsociable Hawks came along. But sometimes I just don't see it. You see it in the team's want to win in 2022 and 2023 and in moments in 2024. And sometimes in press conferences, I feel like we just don't get to see that side of Fly. But a lot of his colleagues and former teammates talk about how competitive he is. And he even says in press conferences, I'm very competitive. I like to see that is true. And you see that when he's standing up for Nick mid-game. I don't mind it. Do I want to see it all the time? No, but it's good to see that there's a pulse in him that suggests that he cares and he has that fucking grit, you know? I like to see that. So which way do you guys lean? Do you lean in the direction of, you know what, Fly, that's unnecessary, leave that to the players? Or are you with me? Are you with me in thinking, yeah, I want to, more than anything, I want to see that Fly has that CUNT in him. So that's what I'm curious. What are we saying? A quality GWS side is obviously going to make Energy Stadium a fortress. We're not going to be the only team getting baths at that ground. I agree. Darcy needs to be more accountable too. He double-fisted the ball out of bounds 70 meters out from our goal. He does that a lot. If you can double... I agree. I haven't spoken much about Darcy Moore yet, just because it's a small sample size. He warmed up as the game went on, but I think in the first half, he had some opportunities to take some strong marks. There was a goal in the second quarter where he sort of clutched at it and dropped it, and then someone snapped it. I think it was Callan Ward snapped it from that boundary. That was when Darcy Moore dropped a relatively intercept mark for his standard. I think he spoils it too much. I remember going to my brother, like, man, there it is. Darcy Moore spoiling shit that he should be taking. And Chris goes, don't worry, like, just give it time. So that's what I'm just going to give it time before, yeah. Hopefully, he took 4 intercept marks in the end. A lot of it came off the back of our forward half territory that we had for the majority of that third quarter. But we need that all Australian Darcy Moore to be taking intercept marks like Sam Taylor. Peter G says, if Cox is ready, bring him in and play McStay at centre half back, a role he did at Brisbane. So there's been a few people talking about McStay at centre half back and Myercheck. I think we're still going to look, as much as I'd love to see Myercheck in the back line, I think we're going to persevere with Reef. He had some good moments. He probably had more bad moments than good moments against GWS, but so did the rest of the team. So I don't want him to get the Ash Johnson treatment last year where, at least with Reef in the back line, he isn't lazy like Ash Johnson, like we saw with Ash Johnson last year. He has his effort, his willpower, his discipline, his desires there. It's just the quality, the class to take a mark and settle us down. He had some good moments, but he probably had more bad moments than good moments. And I think we're going to have to live with Reef McInnes being trialled in the back line. As much as I'd love to see this, Peter. Bo playing mid is more important when we don't have Daicos. I agree. We need to train Ed Allen. Ed Allen had a good game in the first half, especially. I think we need to keep persevering with him in the midfield as an inside mid. Stuart says, no, the coach should not have any part. The player should do it. Your local espresso says, no point flying the flag if he's going to sit down as soon as Kingsley. Yeah, that part where he sits down and sort of puts his hands on his lap like he's just been told off by his teacher, that was funny. That was a bit submissive, wasn't it? Allen isn't the defender, exactly, Hawks Hour. Cox start this week? I don't know. We'll see. We're gonna do the we'll predict the team in a moment. Big man thinks Schultz and Hoskin Elliott out. Cox and Houston in. Framps sub. I don't think Frampton as a sub is. We probably want speed injected into our game, like Ned Long afforded us on the weekend. Reef has, yeah, I mentioned this in one of the early videos in the preseason. I said Reef's got to work on his spoils. He's got to look at one of his defensive partners in Jeremy Howe and look at the way Jeremy Howe spoils. Like some of the spoils Jeremy Howe did on the weekend, even that one where he punched it out of Cadman's arms when it seemed like an easy chest mark. Should have he paid the mark? Maybe, but Howe made the umpire question the call. So I think Jeremy Howe, with what he does with these spoils, is nothing short of incredible. And then you think about what he's able to do when he's able to intercept the ball as well. I thought Jeremy Howe was a little bit better than average on a weekend and brave. I think a lot of players were brave on the weekend with some of the head in the hole moments they had. Long is too slow, I understand, but coming into the game, he looked fast. So that's why I'm not sure if there's a difference between being a good sub and a good starter. I don't know if Ned, yes, he played well when he came on. Does he earn himself a starting berth? Probably not, but we're going to do the predicted team in a moment. We're all grown men, says Stephanos. Let the personality of people come out. We take the good with the bad. Being strong mentally is part of the game. I like it. We need to invest in a proper forwards coach, someone who's been a champion full forward in the past. So, yeah, so Scott Selwood is the forward coach. He was he ever a medium-sized forward, or was he just mainly a midfielder or a defender? Got to keep Ed Allen in. Ramage wasn't impressed with Ed Allen. He dropped off on the win. Allen did when Long went inside. Honestly, some of our fan base need to settle down, says Kev. All right. So let's go into predicting the team. So let's pull up. We'll go zero hanger and we'll do it together. Zero hanger. I was the laughing magpie, by the way. I'm just going. Ben, why are you being Hawks Owl for? What's that about? All right. So we'll try it. We'll go early this week and see if we can predict what type of team we'll be working with. Give me like 30 seconds and I'll have it ready. Collingwood. Zoom out. All right. Present. Share screen. All right, here we go. All right, we can all see that. All right, let's have a crack. So, fullback, we'll say Darcy Moore. Back pocket, Maynard. Where are you? Maynard. The other back pocket, let's just say Jeremy Howe for now. Well, this is going to be welcoming, isn't it? Dan Houston. Oh, not TJ. Sorry. Centre half back. They'll try McInnes again. I think we'll persevere with Josh Daicos. I think he had an average game in the back line, but generally speaking, he's been good since he's been put there halfway through last year, or not halfway through last year, but since maybe like round 18 last year, he's been good there. All right. I will say I'm going to field what I think Collingwood will field, but I'll tell you whether I necessarily agree with it. So I still think Jack Crisp plays on a wing, although I'd like him to play more in the midfield. He only played 15% in the midfield. I think he deserves at least 30%. I think Perriman was amazing. I think he was outstanding in a disappointing game for the majority of our players. The other winger is Lipinski, who was very quiet in that first half, just the 4 touches. We need a stronger start from this man on the weekend. Finished with 17 touches. Need a little bit more from him on Saturday. Kicked 4 goals against Port Adelaide last time at the G, so maybe some good juju there. Half forward, so the high players will be Shooter, and then like I said, Bo will be here, but I'd like to see Bo rotate through the midfield a little bit more. Centre half forward, you're going to get Brody, Myercheck, and then McStay, and then Elliott, who was also very serviceable on the weekend, and then Bobby Hill. Bobby Hill's another one who, on the weekend, if he has as little impact as he did in the first half, maybe you swap like Bobby and Lockie Schultz and let Bobby get up to the stoppages a little bit more and then put Lockie deep, because Lockie can take a mark as well. So these players, I didn't see much of Bobby further up the ground. I saw a lot of Lockie and Bo. I didn't see a lot of Bobby Hill. And Jamie Elliott was just fine playing as, I think he probably attended 1 or 2 centre bounces, which will happen from time to time, but he's always good deep. I think he's got a perfect sweet spot. Bobby Hill, on the other hand, when he goes missing, we have to put him up higher. I'm not saying he's a winger. Bobby Hill, but I'm saying we need to get him into the stoppages a little bit more. Not stoppages that are just outside our forward 50. I think even beyond that, around here. I think Bobby sometimes goes missing because the way the ball is entering our forward 50. If that's the case, get Bobby up the ground. Why can't he do what Brent Daniels does? Bobby Hill is a magician with the ball. He finds difficult targets. He has that in his arsenal. All right. Darcy Cameron, ruck. I still don't think, even if Mason Cox is available, I still don't think they make a call on that just yet with regards to dropping like a Membry. I think Nick Daicos gets the starting line. You're probably going to see Pendles there as well. How often will we see Nick Daicos, Pendlebury, and Perriman at the same stoppage? Well, I suppose it depends on you'd like to think what type of team we're versing. Say on Saturday against Port. I think this is the best look. So hypothetically, right? Let's say, how do I change this? What if it looked like this on the weekend? Let's just do this just for a second. So I can do this. Can I put? And then you go there and then put Pendles A on a bench. I think on the weekend, I'd love to get a good dosage of Nick Daicos, Beau McCreary, and Harry Perryman. And that gives you Jason Horne-Francis, Connor Rozee, and Willem Drew. I think that matches up perfect. So you go, Nick Daicos will get Willem Drew, Perryman on, say, a Rozee, and Beau McCreary on a Horne-Francis, perhaps. And you just get Beau and Perryman to alternate between the two matchups there. And then Pendles starts on the bench. So then for the rest of the bench, so Will Hoskin-Elliott's likely going to be unavailable from what I've heard. Tim Membry on the bench. Not that the bench really matters. Not Jacob Ryan. Isaac Quaynor. And then is there someone else? Ed Allen. So who will be the sub? Who have we got left? Because you've got Dan Houston who comes in, who we've already got there. You've got Hoskin-Elliott coming out. So let's have a look. I don't know. Zero Hanger. They don't have the sub option, but let's just have a look here. Who else is there? Oh, you got Ned Long as well, right? You got Ned Long. Would I have anyone else other than Ned Long right now? Nah, I'd probably keep Ned Long as a sub. I think he's earned his spot there. What do we make of that? Let's catch up. I'll make sure you guys can see this as well. There you go. Out Will Hoskin, Schultz and Membry. We're not going to make Espresso. We're not going to make wholesale changes just yet. It's just not what we're going to do. Hoskin not available. Chris says, I think Membry should be dropped with Schultz this week. The Goey is still out, yes. Cox in this week. Sam Taylor destroyed us down back. Having a 2'11" ruckman who can take big marks is ideal, defensively and offensively. Frees up McStay to play that key forward role. I agree. I just don't know if it's going to happen yet. Josh Daicos must go to the wing. Again, that's something I'm just not willing to bite on just yet. I think we give him a little bit more time. He's still learning how to be defensively accountable. And there will be footage of him being shown where he looks a little bit off it in that game. It's all about how quickly can he turn that around and make it a strength of his game. I'm not saying he has to be the best halfback defensively, but there are times where he just needs to be smarter about his awareness of what's around him, where he needs to be at given times when the ball is in motion. Crisp had that elite run in the midfield 22 or 23 before he got put back to the wing. Yeah, and that's why I think at some point we need to see a little bit more of Jack Crisp in the midfield as well, 100%. You saw what he did when we had all those injuries last year, and he was outstanding in that midfield for, was it 4 or 5 games, and he looked good. And then because certain players came back in, he had to go back to the wing. I don't know. I just don't think we're using him to the best of his ability. Agree with swapping Hill and Schultz. Rick says Josh needs to play wing. We need him kicking inside 50. Having Houston and Josh too far up the ground opens up our defense on the turnover. Like I said, we can definitely visit that at some point, just not yet. I don't think it's going to happen. Not right now. I can see it happening, but I don't think our coach is going to make a really quick decision like that just yet. Quaynor on the halfback, Josh on the wing. Like Quaynor sort of already plays on the halfback anyways. Like, look at this, right? I'll just move that there for a sec so I can put Quaynor here. So what you're saying is you put Quaynor there, and then say you put Daicos here, Josh Daicos, and then you put Lipinski on the like. Then you've only got Dan Houston who can use the ball here. I would argue out of the 6 defenders on the field at any given time, you need 2 quality. To be a really elite side, you need 2 quality ball users. So for GWS, you had Lockie Whitfield. Good question. Who else was? Help me out. Let me check the AFL app. Teams, lineups. They have Lockie Whitfield and Lockie Ash, 2 quality movers off the half back. What about Hawthorn? I mean, almost all their players in the back line are all quality movers out of the back line. You have Sicily, you have Jarman Impey, Scrimshaw. There's a bunch of those players. So I think just to have Dan Houston there it's not enough. He needs someone to dance with. Markov is injured, Tark. Yes, Bo in the middle, says Kieran. We missed a goalie, don't we all? Don't we all? Moore should be looking to take more marks. He has a lot of opportunities. I agree. Too many spoils, not enough marks from our captain. Yeah, he had 4 intercept marks, but he very well could have had 8 on the weekend. He really could have. What's my hair doing there? Anyhow, guys, thanks as always for joining the Pies Presser today. We'll be back tomorrow for the Pies Footy Show. And until then, go Pies.